In pre-Christian times, there were schools known today as the mystery schools or the mystery religions. The messages encoded in the scriptures and ancient archaeology came from adepts of spiritual science. The intent was to teach the initiates the deeper meaning of these myths. What became later termed as Lucifer, Satan, or the devil was representative of the ego, which rivals the Lord, the representative of the self. The true self is the epicenter of a person's entire being. It is the total sum of everything that we are. The false ego, on the other hand, is the idea and concept we create about ourselves in the course of our lives, which typically excludes any qualities we don't wish to accept about ourselves. However, humanity has been endowed with the freedom to choose either to obey the true self or to give in to the temptation of the vanity and materialism of the false ego. This is the most notable trait that separates man from animal: our freedom of choice, the choice to follow our concepts and ideals or our natural impulses, the choice to sustain nature or to destroy it. This freedom of choice weighs on the fate of the entire organism that we call humanity. Cancer begins with a group of cells within a community that fail to communicate with the conscious signal of the organism. Those cells begin to grow out of control and spread to other areas of the organism. This very disease is evident in our world today. The cancer upon our earth is the domination of our false ego and our divorce from nature. Collectively, among every human, the cancer upon our earth is the domination of our false ego and our divorce from nature. Collectively, among every human, vanity leads to segregation and competition. Competition leads to fear and greed. Greed leads to deceit and immorality. And immorality is the breeding ground for illness, waging war on our earth. Every act of hatred and destructiveness in our world begins with self-hate and self-destructiveness. And that all begins with a breakdown in communication. Carl Jung discovered that there is a collective unconscious connected to all humans, meaning that the whole of humanity shares a single mind with one another. This is evident in the world through accounts of shared mythology and symbols, the study of morphic fields, and with the science of kinesiology. This collectivity is a global example of the unconscious mind of the human body, in which trillions of cells share a similar signal. This parasite, called our false ego, requires a continuous flow of sustenance to survive. Food, fuel, and any other form of sustenance is energy. Human consciousness is an electromagnetic field of energy. When this potential energy is utilized, it then releases kinetic energy, which is used to perpetuate the false ego. This scenario occurs in the smallest parasitic organisms, all the way to a collective organism called humanity. A parasite will release chemicals that cause the host to crave the sustenance that the parasite needs to survive. As long as the host is unaware, it will keep feeding the parasite and starving itself. In a similar way, Wilhelm Reich stated that whole societies suffer from a psychosis caused by starving our organic biological impulses. He states that sexual suppression supports the power of the church, which has sunk very deep roots into the exploited masses by means of sexual anxiety and guilt. It engenders timidity towards authority and binds children to their parents. This results in adult subservience to state authority and to capitalistic exploitation. It paralyzes the intellectual critical powers of the oppressed masses because it consumes the greater part of biological energy. Finally, it paralyzes the resolute development of creative forces and renders impossible the achievement of all aspirations for human freedom. In this way, the prevailing economic system, in which single individuals can easily rule entire masses, becomes rooted in the psychic structures of the oppressed themselves. What Reich was showing in this powerful quote is that on a collective level, the suppression of a natural function, whether biological, spiritual, or emotional, will result in an abnormal reaction, a psychic disease. This illness or disease is reflected into the masses through a collective unconscious and acts as an epidemic. Humanity is plagued with an incapacity for freedom, meaning that people en masse lack the ability to govern themselves on a psychic level, and this manifests in the macrocosm as government and organized religious powers, thus opening the throne, our national and individual throne, to anyone and anything. Enter the infamous rulers of the earth, the patriarchs of civilization, political, social, economic, and spiritual dictatorship, psychic tyranny. This simple illness within our psyche, this lack of responsibility and neglect of basic human freedom, has made way for every tyrant that has ever held rule over people on this planet. Think of any position of power that you believe to be above you. Royal families, government leaders, the United Nations, financial organizations, corporate monopolies, and media juggernauts. These are all facets of our false ego. They are the physical advent of our own sickness. They require our conscious participation, our conscious energy to survive. Because without our cooperation, without supplying them with the sustenance of complicity, they starve. Their very nature depends on our desire to be ruled. And a typical symptom of the illness among humanity today is our continuous denial of our illness. Repression. We consistently repress those qualities we choose not to accept about ourselves. This is why it is so difficult to see the false ego and its multiple manifestations for what they truly are. This is the very nature of the false ego. It acts as a red herring to distract us from the freedom we truly have. For this psychic parasite to survive, it must supply us with a chemical that will cause us to remain dependent upon it. In this case, the sustenance is our conscious energy. And in order for us to feed it to the parasite, the chemical of fear causes humanity to crave protection and defense.
The functions of the body to survive can be broken down to two basic functions for any organism to survive. You have to be able to grow, maintain yourself, take care of your biology, but you also must be able to protect yourself, so that if you're just growing and you can't protect yourself, you'll become food for something else. So the survival involves a balance between growth and protection. Through the history of human civilization and through human evolution, we recognize that our nature is to be in a state of growth, and that our protection is only supposed to be used to, help us out of that threatening moment. You can't be in growth and in protection at the same time. So the significance is, when we see a need of protection, the stress hormones in the body shut off the blood vessels in our viscera or gut, which is the part of the body for growth. Well, the issue is, if you took the blood from the viscera and moved it out to the arms, then you left no blood in the viscera. That means no growth. But you're ready to fight. And when your fighting is finished, then the blood returns back to the viscera and you grow again. But in the world that we live in today, it's 24/7 fear. So we have a continuous dripping of that stress hormone into the body. It's just dripping all the time, getting us ready to run or fight or flight at any moment. At the drop of a hat, we're ready to go because we're on guard. Well, the problem is, what does that mean about your allocation of energy? And it says, we're spending most of our energy in protection.
Just remember that the false ego has only one desire: to become greater and more powerful than the true self. This illness causes us to believe that we are separate from nature. This is why we see such a rise in the dependency of technology. This is why we see such little stewardship for the earth and the environment. And this is why we see bigotry, racism, sexism, and every other form of discrimination possible that leads to crime, violence, wars, and eventually, the global destruction of the organism. This endless state of fear, confusion, and segregation our world seems to live in is a symptom of the false ego creating a false threat.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!